Okay, I'm here with Richard Purcell, one of the original writers of the Ren and Stimpy show.
It's me.
Vincent Waller, one of the storyboard artists, directors, and writers.
Hello.
Eddie Fitzgerald, one of the original storyboard artists and layout artists. Now, this cartoon's really interesting because it was started at Spumco and finished by Games, which is the Nickelodeon studio that took over Ren and Stimpy after they asked us to leave.
Go.
And the cartoon happens to be about a subject that's very dear to my heart. It's about how stupid the animation business is and how everything is done completely backwards. So this is a satire on how cartoons are made, how modern cartoons are made. Not classic cartoons like Bugs Bunny, Daffy Duck, and Popeye, which are cartoons that I love. But I started in the cartoon business around 1980 and was amazed at how retarded the whole system was. That artists had absolutely no say in the making of cartoons. So anyways, here's the cartoon. I wrote it with Eleanor Blake, and it was directed by somebody else who didn't have exactly the same experience that I did. Some of the experience, but it was my passion in the writing and story and somebody trying to figure out how to do it.
What John meant by that.
So, let me see.
That was a nice drawing of Stimpy at the table, that one there.
As I remember, there's a lot of really weird drawings in this that are out of context with the story, that they don't really fit what's going on. But, we'll see. It's been a while since I've seen it.
Well, I remember the way the industry used to be. It used to be the writers were the only creative people and artists were just the rest.
Yes, they would.
And the writers would they would be invited to all the creative meetings. There were never artists sitting there. And a writer told me once, he said, well, we're keeping the industry for the day when a new Chuck Jones appears. If one ever does, we'll hand it over to him, which I doubt, but that's what he said.
But Jesus will never come as far as they're concerned.
But he said, I don't see any new Chuck Joneses on the horizon. Of course, he wasn't looking.
He doesn't want to find one.
So this Wilbur Cobb thing, it was actually Raymond Spum to begin with, which was the namesake for Spumco. But since the show was taken over by Games, they had to change that to
Any
something
mention
else.
of Spum.
Yes, no Spum.
Let me interrupt for a second. Kind of the initial setup of this cartoon is that Stimpy wants to make a cartoon, and Ren makes fun of him. Ren thinks it's a stupid, childish thing for him to do, but he really doesn't think that. He only berates Stimpy because he himself has no talent. He can't draw. So then Stimpy figures out, well, it doesn't matter if you can't draw. If you can't draw, then you can write. Now the gag there is that that's exactly how network executives think. The way you become a cartoon writer nowadays is the only criteria that you have to have is that you can't draw. If you can't draw, you automatically are a cartoon writer.
Or a producer.
So
Yeah, they think you're too close to it if you're an artist.
Yes.
You can't be objective.
You can't possibly write your own story.
yeah. Now,
Whoa.
there's Bill Ray.
There's a, yeah. Not that he drew it. That looked like him.
So, anyways, this was meant to be somewhat emotional, and you're supposed to have some empathy for Ren, but it's not coming off anywhere near how I imagined it.
The psychotic
So
intensity
this
is
is
missing.
this is where Ren is supposed to admit the shame of not being able to draw, and it is a shame. I know one animator said to me, her name is Jess. I know her very well. She said to me once, she confided in me and said, I have this secret belief that I've kept inside me ever since I was a kid. I said, what's that? She said, I believe that people who can't draw are somewhat retarded.
Well, that cemented that friendship, I'm
So
sure.
that's
The truth comes out.
That's the opposite opinion of network executives
Yes.
who think people who are somewhat retarded should run the cartoon business.
Well, John was always having meetings, with live action people, and they're people the rest of the town would kill to see, and he's having lunch
Here's a
with them.
joke that completely got blown.
What was the joke?
You could write.
The joke was, well, if you can't draw, well, first of all, he has sympathy for Ren for not being able to draw, which is the same thing that Jess said. If you can't draw, you're an inferior creature. That's what this gag was, but it didn't come across.
Yeah.
The gag was, okay, well, if you can't draw, then you can write. And now Ren admits that he can't even write. He's not even smart enough to write. And the original gag was here that I had to change was that, well, if you can't even write, you can be the executive. He's even less than a writer.
Well, an awful lot of executives have no entertainment
Wait, let me finish
experience
this. Let me
whatsoever.
finish this.
Yeah,
I got to
but-
finish this gag. Hold on. When I submitted that, I changed the word to producer,
Yeah.
really meaning executive. And I sent it off to Nickelodeon, and they were furious. They sent back a note saying, you're calling us idiots by saying that we're producers. I said, well, I had to remind them. I said, wait a minute. You're not the producer of the cartoon. I am.
Uh-huh.
I'm making fun of myself, which was a lie. I wasn't making fun of myself. But when Games did this cartoon, they took it literally. So they turned Ren into me, and they did Ren as a caricature of me.
Yeah, he shows
which
up in your
really
glasses later.
blew the whole point of the cartoon. Because the point of the cartoon is that artists are the ones that should be in charge of the animation business, as they used to be 40 years ago. But now, it's a mixed message. It's the Games guys trying to get back at me for something, I don't know what, for making them rich.
Yeah.
And so they turned it into let's make fun of John, which is okay. That's like if they made a cartoon that was really about me being a mean director, okay, I'm fair game.
Yeah, I think that Ren's Vacation was pointed at somebody else, though.
Ren's Vacation?
Mm-hmm. You didn't see that?
Is that in this?
Yeah, they just showed it a second ago. It's like Ren's Vacation took up
Oh,
the
that's
entire calendar.
that's Bob.
Yeah.
That's a joke on Bob.
Yeah. As I recall.
Well, see, that's a case where you have to be really careful when you're a director, because you're tempted all the time by putting in funny gags or whatever, in jokes and things that may be funny as standalone gags, but if they interfere with the construction of the story or the point of the story, it's not helping the cartoon. So I would have handled this and really made the point of how stupid the cartoon business is. That's what the cartoon was about.
Yeah.
How mixed up, backwards, and retarded the modern cartoon business is. And the shame of it is, all the revolutions and the breakthroughs that Ren and Stimpy made had some momentum for the first few years, and it the Cartoon Network, the Nickelodeon studio benefited from all the revolutions and things that we did in the Ren and Stimpy show. And it's all kind of degrading again, and it's going back to the network executives in charge and the writers in charge, and they've undone everything that we pushed forward.
Yeah, I'm in charge now.
There you go.
Yeah.
Richard is now in charge, and I made him a writer. I gave him his first big break. Vincent, punch both of us.
Now, I still remember the day you said, Rich, you said, we're going to get rich. And I was like, we're going to get rich? Yeah. And I thought you meant really rich, and you meant Rich Purcell.
But wait a minute. The reason I mentioned that you
Big
had these
debate.
meetings with all these live action people that were hard to reach was that after you came and met us afterwards, we'd have to remind you to tell us something about the meeting because you held it in such little consequence, evidently. And I got the feeling that you really believed that live action people, well, you felt sorry for them. You felt in some way that they were leading second-rate lives because they weren't cartoonists.
Because they were drowning in money.
Yes.
Or we were
Hey,
pure
here's-
in our filth and squalor.
Is this the
There's your-
first appearance of John?
Yes.
Just because you used to wear glasses kind of shaped like that?
Yep.
Oh, yeah.
This is true, this part here. I admit it.
Yes.
A fascist.
That's me
On the top.
surveying people's storyboards.
Yes.
Jim's in the other room going, yes.
That's a funny thing there.
I never saw you inhale a fly, though.
Well, that's
Oh,
weird. What's going on there?
We don't get to hear what you say.
I don't know what's going on there. I wonder if they just cut it or if that's on purpose.
I think that's on purpose.
That is so typical. That's real.
That was Bob's
All right.
storyboard by the end.
All you guys out of here.
Yep. We're fired again.
Hey, maybe we should do a little. Here's a really interesting thing about Ren and Stimpy. It was on the air for what, 5 years?
Yeah.
And those 5 years were like a really fast mirror image of the golden age of cartoons. If you watch old cartoons in the 1930s, the early 30s, the cartoons look really primitive, and they evolve, and they get better and better and more technically proficient by the end of the 30s, and they continue to evolve in the 40s, although at a slower rate. Then in the 50s, everything is has become, there are about 5 standard styles
Yeah.
that started in the 30s, developed in the 40s,
That had reached
and
the pinnacle.
stopped in the
yeah.
50s. By the end of the 50s, animation went into a decline. Then in the 60s, it completely went into a decline until it was completely dead, and everything was awful. That thing that took 35 years repeated itself in 5 years with Ren and Stimpy.
Yeah.
If you watch the first season episodes of Ren and Stimpy, the first 2 or 3 are really primitively drawn,
Oh, yeah.
bad finish, lots of camera mistakes.
Weird
And
little
that's
mouths.
because that was the first time that the bunch of us really got a chance to make our own cartoons, and we didn't know what the hell we were doing. We had some.
Nice painting there.
See that I would not have had anything like this in this cartoon. It's just weird ugliness for ugly's sake.
But it was weirdly out of focus.
See, that doesn't make sense to make really hideous drawings of Stimpy. Stimpy's the lovable character. You can make him gross and ugly, but he's got to be cute when you do that. So, anyways, back to
Spumco's transition.
yeah. If you watch the beginning of the first season of Ren and Stimpy and the end of the first season, the last couple of cartoons we did were Stimpy's Inventions
Yeah.
and Space Madness.
Yeah, and they were just head and shoulders above.
Yeah, the animation
Yeah.
was better,
Yeah,
the
Stimpy's
drawings
Big
were better,
Day.
the direction was better, the voices got better, everything evolved. Now, prior to Ren and Stimpy, the modern cartoon business in the 70s and 80s, nothing evolved. You were not allowed to have your characters evolve,
That's for sure.
right? Filmation and Hanna-Barbera, the major studios at the time, once they decided on a series, they had their character designs up front, and if the series lasted 10 years, they never changed.
They had a story Bible, which the writers did, and the artist had to conform to that story Bible 100%.
Oh, yeah. No, I remember
Yes.
on the real Ghostbusters. These are the only faces Egon can make.
Oh, let me interrupt you.
Yep.
Now, yeah. This is Wilbur Cobb,
Yes.
which has nothing to do with the cartoon that I wrote.
Yeah.
Originally, this character was supposed to be Raymond Spum. Raymond Spum is the guy who founded animation. Before Winsor McCay, before Walt Disney, and he's the unwritten hero of animation. And we wrote him right in, that's who Spumco is named after. It's named after
Raymond
Spum. For some reason, they decided at games, maybe they thought I would sue them if they used Raymond Spum, since he's our founder.
Or they just wanted to get rid of Spum.
Maybe they did, but they
They
replaced
hated
him with
Spum.
this character who has nothing to do with the story.
My film?
And of course, he went on to great glory
Yes.
later and became a very beloved character in his own right.
Did his own spin-off series. Yeah.
Reality show now.
Okay,
Over
so
Bob's corpse.
back to my preposterous theory that Ren and Stimpy was a sort of a microcosmic repeat of the history of animation.
Well, I can see that because, in the 50s with animation, the artists stopped doing what they did at Disney's and going out and observing life and caricaturing, right? They got into little walks and everything that you could do that were abstract, little bird walks and everything that you could sort of figure out just sitting there at the storyboard. And they looked funny, but they weren't based on any acting or observation. And that was fine, actually. I like some of those things. They're very clever and fun to watch. But there was a whole generation then where animators didn't go out into the streets and actually watch the way people acted in restaurants and buses and so on.
They didn't-
John used to say to people, the problem with you is you don't ride the bus enough.
Yeah, okay, cartoons got into, like many art forms, at some point they become inbred, where the people making the art are just imitating other artists. And the artists they imitate are ones who observed life and had their own opinion about life. And that's how they created their style. That's pretty much what we have now is the imitators. The imitators are back making, well, geez, it's happened all over American culture today.
Yeah.
A really horrible thing was that American blacks had so many interesting, things they did, movements and everything, and people were so afraid of being labeled racist that
See,
none of that appeared in
here's an
animation.
example of what I was talking about. There were a whole bunch of really ugly drawings of Ren. That's drawn by somebody who probably worked on the original Ren and Stimpy's and saw me do what they thought were ugly drawings or extreme drawings. But whenever I did ugly extreme drawings, they were always completely in context with the emotion that was happening in the story. But somebody who's just imitating me and not telling their own life story is just imitating. So they think, what would John do? And I've heard people who worked at games, they said every day that was the one question in everybody's mind is, what would John do?
I'm sure.
Well, I wouldn't randomly throw in some ugly drawings. My ugly drawings there's some more of those random ugly drawings. My drawings were always in context. When I do acting, I may come up with weird expressions, but they're weird for a reason. They're not just weird for weird's sake. And my biggest observation about the later Ren and Stimpy's were they were weird for weird's sake, ugly for ugly's sake, mean for mean's sake. But they were about stories that no one cared about.
Well, if there had been a third season of Spumco, I'm sure acting would have been, the top of the agenda. That seemed to be where the studio was going, into really heavy acting.
Well, man's best friend, the psychodrama.
Yeah.
So yeah, anyways, if you watch Bugs Bunny cartoons or Mickey Mouse cartoons, the early Bugs Bunnies and Mickey Mouses look very different than, they changed every year. Every single year, Mickey would turn into a slightly different character. Bugs Bunny did too.
Yeah.
At some point, they froze the characters.
And depending on who was drawing it. Yeah.
Yeah, and depending on who, like Chuck Jones drew Bugs Bunny different in 1942 than Bob Clampett drew him. Within Bob Clampett's own unit, each of the animators drew Bugs Bunny different. And then they drew them different again in the next cartoon.
Yeah.
Yep.
Now, all those things today would be considered
Wrong.
sacrilege.
I love that because you can pick out the artist, and it's fun to go in there and say, oh, this guy drew this scene and that guy drew that scene.
Who drew this scene?
That's not allowed anymore.
I don't know.
That is not allowed anymore. Now, the closest thing to still doing what we're talking about, that's drawing off model, I would say was probably SpongeBob, right?
Yeah.
They have some of
Where
that
I
in
can
SpongeBob.
actually see an Aaron Springer drawing or a Paul Tibbett drawing.
Or Vincent. Vincent works on SpongeBob. So that's probably the inheritor of Ren and Stimpy. Sort of like 5 steps down. But
But it has a nice feeling to it.
that's sort of like the Roman version of the Greeks. Right?
Why, that was right on the tip of my tongue. How did you think of it?
When are they going to put that vomitorium in over there? That's what I want to know. Yeah.
Isn't there one show that happens over there where they have a prayer meeting before the story, each story session
There might be.
on a creator-driven show?
I don't know if there's a prayer meeting, but there's a couple of more pious-based
Here's a really funny thing.
shows.
The term creator-driven was coined by Jerry Laybourne, who was the president of Nickelodeon. And she's the one who bought Ren and Stimpy, who gave the okay to buy Ren and Stimpy and take a chance on one of the weirdest cartoons ever made.
Didn't Kit
During the most-
Laybourne, her husband, do this cartoon?
I think he did, didn't he?
It looks
Or
like it. It looks like his style.
Oh,
Pretty sure.
I don't know. But this little bit here in the cartoon is it's supposed to be a tribute to 30s Rubber Hose cartoons, because Rubber Hose cartoons tended to have no story at all. If you watch the really early Betty Boops, the good ones, they're pretty structureless story-wise, and they're just weird things that go on that are really funny.
Right.
So
But they didn't.
That's
they didn't-
Stimpy's favorite kind of cartoon.
Yeah.
So that's what Stimpy's trying to make here. He's trying to make a Betty Boop cartoon.
Yeah.
So the dialogue we wrote for this is based on Eleanor and I used to watch Betty Boop cartoons all the time. We'd laugh at how silly they were. So it was, in a way, that was a kind of a tribute to it.
And Eleanor is April March, to those of you that only know her by April March.
The singer.
So yeah, anyways, back to Bugs Bunny changes, Mickey Mouse changes. All the old characters used to change constantly. And eventually they went into decline. In the late 50s, a lot of cartoon characters went into pretty bad decline.
Yeah. Became humanoid and such.
Yeah.
This is funny.
And then when they left the original artists, when Chuck Jones, like if you watch a Bugs Bunny cartoon made nowadays or in the last 30 years, that wasn't made by Chuck or Bob Clampett or Tex Avery.
Makes my skin crawl.
Yeah, they make your skin. They're horrible. Listen, you worked on one, didn't you?
Yeah, I worked on the one of the Looney Tunes shorts that I don't think ever made to the screen. Daffy Duck's Christmas.
Yeah. There's a big mistake in philosophy in modern animation, and that's that the character is the franchise. And it's not the character that's the franchise. It's a combination of the character and the director and the artists that work on that franchise.
Boy, that is true. That is so true.
Because Bugs Bunny, without Chuck Jones, Tex Avery, and Bob Clampett, and not just without the directors, but without the animators that were working with them in the 1940s and the atmosphere they had in the 1940s, those characters, nobody has been able to revive them. And what the whole business doesn't understand is the artists are more important than anything else.
Yeah.
Without artists who really believe in the characters, who understand the characters, and have the skill and the experience to make it work.
And even if they get a group of artists that do, and they did, they still didn't. It's like when they brought us all in, it was going to be the old school where we do, the artists like take an outline and they do the storyboard and pitch the storyboard, and then we all talk about it and we make it better and we punch it up. But what it really turned out was you're handed an outline, and you do a storyboard directly from the outline, no matter what, without making any changes to it. And we're out of time.
Well, we could pick it up on another cartoon.
Yeah.
We better tell them which cartoon. Let's pick that up with Lair of the Lummox, and we're going to invite Jim Smith into that one, who drew a lot of that cartoon. So if you want to hear more of this story, watch Lair of the Lummox and listen to the commentary on that.
And we're going to have to peel one of us off because we can only fit 4 of our big fat asses in this room at once.